In February 2026, Iran lost its supreme leader, its nuclear program, and nearly 2,000 Hezbollah fighters within a matter of weeks. More than 150 warships destroyed. The economy collapsing, the regime militarily humiliated. And it was exactly at that moment that Iran decided to do something no one expected. They set up a toll booth at the most important strait on the planet and sent a warning to the entire world. Pay to pass. But instead of collecting the toll, Iran got something it didn't expect. To understand why this move made sense to the regime and why it went so wrong, you need to understand one thing about the Strait of Hormuz. Because what was really at stake wasn't oil, it was a much older question. Who sets the rules of the sea? This waterway is only 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. It doesn't seem like much. But 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil consumed in the world passes through there. Natural gas, fuel, petrochemical products, all of that goes through this bottleneck every day. Closing the Strait of Hormuz is like squeezing the jugular of the global economy. Iran has known this for decades. It was their trump card, their most valuable one. But after the February attacks, the regime had almost all its cards on the table. The nuclear program, which took 40 years and billions of dollars to build, was destroyed in days. Hezbollah in Lebanon was bleeding. The missiles, the launchers, the warships, dismantled by American and Israeli air forces. And what about the economy? Well, it was already on its knees before the war began, with chronic inflation and sanctions that had lasted for decades. What was left was the strait. So the regime did the math. If we no longer have real military power, we'll use what we still control. The world needs Gulf oil. The world will pay. In March of 2026, the Iranian regime announced that ships wanting to cross the strait would have to ask for permission and pay for the privilege. They created an entity with its own website, official email, and fees that reached up to $2 million per ship. The Revolutionary Guards, the regime's most powerful military branch, took control of the passage. Payments were accepted in Chinese yuan and Bitcoin, directly to the regime's own wallets outside the Western financial system. And so it wouldn't look like extortion, because extortion is exactly what it was. The regime rebranded the scheme. They called it a navigation services fee, maritime insurance, or, my favorite, the environmental tax for the protection of the Persian Gulf. The same toll, different packaging. Total cynicism. Imagine the oil tanker captain stopped at the entrance of the strait, receiving an email with an official form, and a Bitcoin account to deposit into. Pay. And you receive a secret code to broadcast on the radio when a Revolutionary Guard speedboat approaches. Don't pay and good luck. Would you bet that the West would pay? Meanwhile, hundreds of ships were anchored in the strait, 20,000 sailors stranded on 2,000 ships, many running out of food, water, and fuel. The world's oil at a standstill. And Iran thinking that time was on its side. It seemed like the plan was working. But then Trump opened his mouth. Donald Trump didn't send diplomats to negotiate. He didn't call Qatar asking for mediation. He didn't open the debate at the United Nations, where Russia and China would have vetoed any resolution. In April 2026, the United States imposed a naval blockade on Iranian ports. Every ship trying to enter or leave Iran had to request authorization from the American Navy. 31 ships were forced to turn back within days. Trump also ordered the Navy to shoot to kill any vessel caught laying mines in the strait. In his words, no ship goes in or out without the approval of the United States Navy.
Right now we have a blockade. They're doing no business. I didn't like seeing boats come out if they were doing business with Iran, but if they weren't, no boats came out. So now Iran is doing absolutely no business.
The strait is locked up tight until Iran makes a deal. The regime that wanted to make the world pay a toll had its own ports blocked. But the humiliation didn't stop there. In May 2026, Iran published a map marking its control zone in the strait. The problem is that this map encroached on the territorial waters of the United Arab Emirates and Oman, two countries that are not part of the conflict. The reaction was immediate. The United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar publicly rejected Iran's authority. More than 115 countries signed a resolution condemning the regime, the largest number in the history of the International Maritime Organization. Even the Chinese President Xi Jinping signaled to Trump that he opposes the toll. No Western operator paid a cent because paying would expose the company to immediate American sanctions. The scheme collected money only from clandestine ships linked to China and Russia that received exemptions from the regime, with allies passing through for free while the West was blocked. China and Russia profiting and vetoing any response at the United Nations at the same time. It's no coincidence. It's their game. And then we get to the most devastating detail of this whole story. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz to put pressure on the world. But over 90% of Iran's own foreign trade goes through that same strait. By closing the bottleneck, the regime cut its own throat. The more they charged, the fewer ships passed. Fewer ships meant less revenue. The regime created a spiral of collapse, and it was at the center of it. The International Monetary Fund projected a drop of more than 6% in the Iranian economy in 2026, with inflation of nearly 70%. Prices have risen 40% since the beginning of the war. There are reports that the government had difficulties paying its own employees. The regime, which wanted to raise billions with a toll, was going bankrupt because of the very toll it created. It lost the war with bombs and tried to win with the toll. That didn't work either. In the ongoing negotiations, Trump demands the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program and the end of armed groups funded by the Iranian government in the region. The regime is still resisting, but the fact that it is negotiating is, in itself, already a defeat for a government that promised never to give in. The West did not pay. And with that, it answered that old question. Who sets the rules of the sea? It's certainly not whoever has geography on their side, it's the one who has the will to defend the order. Marco Rubio summed it up well. If you let it happen in Hormuz, it happens in 5 other places. China in the South China Sea, Russia in the Baltic Sea, every dictatorship in the world watching and taking notes. Giving in here wouldn't just be weakness toward Iran, it would be a green light for all the others. And Iran, well, got into this bet thinking it had its last card to play, but ended up finding out that the card wasn't worth as much as it thought. And you, what do you think? Will the Iranian regime survive this crisis, or are its days numbered? Leave your opinion in the comments. If this video helped you better understand what's happening in the world, share it with someone who also follows geopolitics. See you next time.